Now I'm up to the last card. I'm starting to actually get the hang of this. This is basically the same as the other side. The only change I'm making is that I'm making the hole a lot bigger for the door handle, just to make sure I can get those locking pins in. I'm not using the clips that I've used on the other three doors. I've worked out that really it doesn't need it with the number of screws that I've got in place. It's holding the card against the frame nicely. And the other difference on this one, and it's only a slight difference, is that the door handle, which is the locking handle on this car is on the passenger side, and the door handle, locking shaft actually comes through the door and sticks out of the frame a bit. So I've actually had to recess a part in the actual door card here for that to sit. So that now sits in there and is able to turn with the handle. So that's the only difference. So what I'm about to do is what I did with the other one. I learnt that I've got to actually start with the few tacks across the bottom so I can tension the whole piece up towards the top, and then I'll actually start tacking and gluing along the top first, as with the other one. I won't show what I'm doing on the way through on this card. I'll show when I'm finished. As I say, exactly the same way. I've just got to watch the tensioning, and the same when I do these, I've got to watch the tensioning with these pieces as well. So I've got to be very careful that I tension as I go down the card, otherwise I'll end up with loose pieces. So anyway, I'll start off. Once again, I've cut oversize, so I may trim some of these down a bit, although this is probably sufficient, it'll come in far enough. And the other thing I haven't done at this stage is to mark the position of the screw holes. So I've got to go around and mark those with lines and distances, so I know where I'm actually going to puncture the vinyl. So anyway, I'll get on with it and try and finish this part of the card off. Sewing the pocket together is, I'll call it difficult in terms of how you've actually got to position all the pieces together. What you've got to allow for is, for when it's sewn together, all you see on the top edge of the pocket is the piping. You're not meant to see any stitching at all. And that's the way that I'll put it in place. The other difficulty you have with the pocket is to actually get this piping to bend, because what it has to do, it has to follow the curve of the pocket, because it's got a long elongated curve. That's why I've cut these little V sections in. That means I can actually bend the piping piece. To start sewing, it's very hard to actually hold all these pieces together with your fingers. Oh, the final door card has been finished. It's been quite some time since I started these door cards. They're very tedious to put together, but certainly the end result is good, and that's really what I'm aiming at. That's the end result that's important. So the only problem with this one is that the timber at the top is a little bit bowed. It's sitting out a bit, so I'm going to put a bracket on the inside of the top edge of that and screw it to the door. They originally had tabs on them, but they haven't been needed on all of the other ones. This is the only one that will require that. So anyway, it's attached, as with the others. I won't be making final attachments till I've done the door rubbers, but it's at least finished, and I'm glad that I don't have to do another door card. What I'll be doing next is looking at the armrests for the front. I'll start pulling those apart to see how they were made, and make those up and see how they're fitted to the door. There actually is a bracket I've got to find that attaches to the door frame under that card, so I've got to find those, attach those, and then work from there. Well, I got this apart, quite a dirty mess. The basic design, of course, is using timber. The timber looks like I can reuse. Just need to clean it up. It's got rusted thumbtacks in there, so I need to get those out. On top of it, it's got a very compressed foam. That appears to be okay, and that's been covered with a thin layer of a padding. I've got no problem with that. I can duplicate that, and I can reuse this. So the structure is fine, at least on this one. It's all reusable. Now, I originally thought these were made out of vinyl. The reason I thought that is certainly this side of it is vinyl. That's the inside of the armrest. The rest of it is actually leather, very brittle leather, of course. Now, I was going to make these out of vinyl, but seeing them made out of leather, I'll have to look at my stock of the red leather I've used for the rest of the upholstery. I'm not sure how much I've got left. I know I've got offcuts, but I'm not sure whether I've got enough to make these. So I'll just have a look at that before I make a decision whether I'm doing these out of vinyl or leather the way they were. I'm certainly not about to go out and buy a full hide just to do these small amounts of leather on these. So I need to search through my stock of red leather and see what I've got available. I haven't pulled this apart. It's very brittle. Every time I try and bend it, it tears. But I will be pulling it apart because I need some templates, and I'm fairly sure I can get the stitching undone and hopefully get enough for the templates, because I'll need that to determine how much leather I need to use. Well, the answer to my question, do I have enough leather? Yes, I've got enough in the scraps. I think that I can certainly make two of these armrests. I've just got to try and select leather that's got a good finish on it, bearing in mind that I cut scraps off where I thought that the finish wasn't quite good enough for the seats. But anyway, I'm sure I can get some pieces out of all the leather I've got there. The problem I'm having though is to get some clean templates. Now, because this leather is so hard and brittle, I'm having trouble unstitching it without actually tearing it. So it hasn't come off as good as I wanted. The other thing I noticed was that the piece that I thought was vinyl on the inside is actually leather as well. So it's a whole cover made of leather, albeit in different pieces. That piece didn't come off too well either. It tore. And this piece, I've still yet to get this piece off. It's as stiff as a board, and I can't seem to cut enough stitches to get it to come off. It'll take a lot more time. And I'll spend the time to get that off, but what I think I'm going to have to do is to get these off as best I can, and then using paper try and get the shape on the paper, and I'll make it a bit oversized, and I'll use the paper templates as the ones for the actual cutting of the leather. If I don't do that, I'm going to run the risk of cutting it too small. As I say, it's very, very stiff, and this piping I still haven't been able to get it off. But anyway, I'll persist with this. I will get it off, because I need to get it off to get a better copy of this main piece here. So it's actually going to take quite a long time just to get the templates right, and then I'll see how I go with stitching it and trying to fit it. So it might only be a small piece, but it's a little bit fiddly if I want to get it right. I mean, make it too small and the piece is useless. Make it a little bit larger, maybe I can manipulate it and put extra padding in to get it to fit right. So anyway, it's early days. I'm having a little bit of difficulty working out how I'm going to sew this together. Now, part of the problem is that I'm using the existing piece of plastic piping, which is cut to a particular length. Now, I probably would have done better just to use a new piece, make it oversize, and then make appropriate adjustments once I've stitched it all the way around and cut off the excess. Having used the original piece, I actually have to sew this on so it fits in basically perfectly at the end. Now, if I get the stitching a little bit out of symmetry, I could end up with it either being too short, like that, or too long. It's more likely going to be too short. What I've done is I've trimmed down the old piece and I've cut it around where the stitch line was, and then I've marked the stitch line on the inside of my new piece. Now, if I've done this correctly, and that's a big if, the idea is that if I've marked the stitch line, I've marked the width of the piping piece from the stitch to the edge, and if I put the edges together and run the stitch line right along the edge of the piping, in theory I should end up with the piece stitched in as it originally was. It's a pretty big if, but I'm basically committed at this stage to at least try it. So I probably won't run the machine up in terms of using the motor. I'll probably do this by hand, because it won't take much to get that stitch in the wrong position to make this too short. In other words, I've stitched it too wide on the piece. It's alright if I do it a little bit short. Not a little bit long, I mean, not short, because I can compress the wadding, both the wadding and the foam on the top of the armrest. Anyway, I'll start stitching and see how I go. Ideally, I should have tried to put all the pieces together, because the piping goes in between all of that. I don't know whether I'm going to do that, because it covers where I'm going to stitch up against the piping. I'd rather leave that open so I can just watch as I'm going and stitch that across. So anyway, here goes. Well, I've managed to sew it. It did end up a bit short in here, but then again, all the others that I've got, they're not only short, but there's a gap in the middle of them. Whether that's a result of age, I'm not sure, but I've just covered it with a piece of leather. It fits over the top at this stage. What I now have to do is to get the leather stitched around the edges. And this is going to become an increasing problem to stitch because of the thickness. Now, I've already got 3 layers to go through there. When I put this on, I'll have 4 layers, so hopefully the machine will cope with that, but I'll just see how it goes. Now, this has been a real challenge to sew. I've just forced that onto the actual foam piece. It would have to be fitted more, obviously. I mean, I haven't put any additional padding in there. The difficulty I've had is trying to sew close enough to the piping, and that gets very hard to do in the machine, because I mean, the machine just won't get me close enough to the piping because of the way the walking foot moves, or certainly with the attachments I've got on. So what I've got to do is I've got to get the stitching closer, stitching of this to the piping. I've got to get it a lot closer than it is, and the problem is more around the tight curves. Getting anything stitched around this tight curve has been a real pain. So what I'm going to do is just take this off, and whether I can do it in the machine or whether I've got to do it by hand, I'm not sure. but I want to get it closer, the stitching a lot closer to the piping. The other thing I've got to do, this piece I've got around the edge is too long at the moment in terms of the pattern I was going off. You can see where this, which is basically this piece, comes round the back and it finishes off further back. That's not so much of a problem, just undo the stitches and put it back there. The reason the join is back there is that's where that will sit against the door card, so effectively you don't see it. That's why it's back that far. So I'll just unstitch this back to about there and back to about there, cut that off. I've got another piece to go and yet to sew on, which is the piece in the middle. But as I said, I've got to get this stitching closer. Now maybe I'll end up having to hand sew it. Hope I don't have to, but I'll see how this goes. But certainly I've got a problem around these end pieces. Let's take that off. It comes off easy enough. So it's a bit like a shoe, a very untidy shoe. Right. Now on the wider curve, it's not so bad to get the machine to go in close and stitch, but around here, this being very tight, the leather is all bunched up and I need to be right in close, and at the moment I haven't been able to get in with the machine, so I'll try some other methods with the machine and see if I can get it closer. But certainly that's where the stitching is at the moment. It's got to be in here. I may see if I've got another attachment for the machine, but at the moment it's not close enough. So it's coming together for what it is, for the size of the piece. I could spend almost as much time doing a door card. Very, very fiddly. Maybe I've got the wrong equipment, don't know, but certainly it's got to go better than it is. Anyway, back to the machine and keep trying to get as I say, the stitching closer so I can't see an uneven attachment to the piping.